There is a petition that has been started, and this is not one of those change.org petitions that you can start about absolutely anything. This is a petition that has made its way right to the hallowed halls of our House of Commons in Ottawa. Our federal parliament will have to consider this because of the number of signatures it has garnered. It is an effort to create a national day in this country for the Butter Tart. I'm not making this up. You know I love me some Butter Tarts. So this is brilliant in my opinion, but I'm not making this up. It's an actual thing. And John Meissner is the man behind the petition. John makes time for our show this morning. So I guess the first and maybe most important question, John, is why? Why did you start this petition?
Well, as we discussed before we started recording, you're a Butter Tart aficionado, right?
I'd like to think so, yes.
I am a Butter Tart Festival Judge, and I've had some really, really great Butter Tarts at some of these festivals, but I've also had some absolutely putrid Butter Tarts. And what started all this was I was a Butter Tart Festival Judge back in February, and there were 6 judges on the judging panel, and there was one Butter Tart. All 6 of us immediately spat it right out on the plate. It didn't even taste like a Butter Tart. It was some, I don't even know about how to begin to describe it, but it was nothing close to what you and I would consider to be a Butter Tart. And I thought, now keep in mind, this is not a home baker. This is a business. This is somebody who is out there selling those things to the general public and saying, this is what a Butter Tart should taste like. And I thought, wow, what has happened to this recipe, this time-honored recipe in Canada, that we are now selling these things to the general public and telling them that this is what a Butter Tart should taste like? And what kind of got this whole petition going was I was thinking to myself, if you're new to Canada or you're visiting Canada from another country and you hear all of us Canadians raving about Butter Tarts, and then you go and try something that makes you want to spit it out on the plate, you're going to think we're crazy. You're going to think we've lost our minds, that this is our national dessert. And so that took me down a road of finding out more about the origin stories of the Butter Tart, who Mary McLeod was. Certainly, my family has been in Canada for 200 years, so I started digging into the pioneering history, not just about Butter Tarts, but of a lot of our Canadian desserts. So the apple fritter, for example, originally was the apple kukula, which was an apple core cut into rings, and then those rings were dipped in batter and fried, and that over time evolved and became the apple fritter. Bannock bread, which has Scottish and traditional indigenous heritage, when you take bannock bread and you deep fry it and cover it in cinnamon sugar, it's essentially a beaver tail, right? So all these things we enjoy come from our pioneering heritage. And something has happened, and I mean, we could put a whole podcast on about this, but over time, things happened which caused people to take shortcuts and to change the recipe and for it to evolve. Now, some of those changes have been really great. But one of those changes was the use of corn syrup. In around the era, World War II era, sugar became incredibly expensive. And so corn syrup was considered an alternative because it was cheap and it was available and it was shelf stable. Then when we get into like 1972 and what's known in history as the Great Grain Robbery of 1972, where Russia bought up a huge amount of North American grain because of a weather disaster they had there, they bought up a lot of our grain. And so American corn production went into overdrive. And by 1980, we had this massive amount of corn that, you know, when the market restabilized, that corn was worth nothing. And so the investors had to get their money back. So they started pushing corn syrup even more than during the World War II era. If you remember back in 1984, Coca-Cola changed their recipe, came out with Coke, or a new Coke, which used corn syrup instead of sugar. And it was an absolute disaster. Within a year, Coke went back to the original recipe of using sugar and rebranded it as Coke Classic, so which is what we're having now. So all these things kind of happen, but I mean, again, the petition to protect our national dessert, to protect Mary McLeod's original 1900 recipe, started with that really bad butter tart at that festival in February.
So, along with a day, John, to recognize this quintessential Canadian dessert, am I hearing, though, that you might be kind of in coordination or in concert with that day, a national butter tart standard? Because as a butter tart aficionado, I've had all kinds. I've had all kinds. Do we need a standard here?
Well, establishing a standard I think, would be a whole other process. But if we can recognize Mary McLeod, so Mary McLeod was from Simcoe County up near Barrie. She was the first person to document this recipe in a cookbook, the Royal Victoria Hospital Women's Auxiliary Cookbook in 1900. She wrote down the recipe for butter tarts. The recipe existed prior to that, and it obviously existed since. But she was the first person to write it down. So this is why I decided to make a push to have Mary's original recipe and Mary McLeod honored with this petition for National Butter Tart Day, because Mary passed away on April the 19th in 1915. And I thought April is the start of the spring season. The outdoor markets are coming back, and a lot of butter tarts are sold at outdoor markets. The flowers are out, the kids are out playing outside again, kind of thing. And I just thought April's a nice time to have this national celebration, and then anchor that celebration in the history of Mary McLeod and the history of butter tarts in Canada.
And this is more than just a whim at this point, I would say. I mean, maybe it starts that way, the bad butter tart experience leading you to pursue this designation. But you've got an MP in Simcoe County involved in this, where Mary McLeod originally from. There's some weight, some heft to this, John.
Absolutely, absolutely. So before you can even get a petition to be put on the House of Commons website, you need an MP to sponsor it. And MP Adam Chambers from Simcoe County, when I reached out and told him what I was thinking of doing, I got the fastest response from a politician I've ever gotten in my life. He responded instantly and said, I am all over this. I love this idea. This is great. Let's do this. So he signed on board, and then I had to get 10 other people to sponsor it, to basically say, yep, we're supporting this. We love this idea. And once I had Adam on board, once I had the sponsors, I then sent it to the House of Commons. They reviewed all the documents and information, and they were able to approve it and put it on the website so it could start gathering signatures. But we've now had engagement from every single province and territory, from BC all the way out to St. John's, and as far as Yukon, Northwest Territories, and Nunavut have all signed the petition. So we've got cross-country support for this entire thing, which is great.
What do you think the chances are of us ultimately? I mean, this April 19th has come and gone, but there's another one next year, I hear. So what do you think your chances are here?
Well, after we get our all the signatures are done, so June 25th is the last day for signatures. And once we get all the signatures, now Adam Chambers has to take that petition forward to the House of Commons. There's a whole parliamentary process that takes place. It could take months before we actually hear anything, but provided that the House of Commons approves it, and I'd have to think it'd be pretty un-Canadian not to, they will then declare April 19th National Butter Tart Day from coast to coast. It'll actually end up on the Canadian calendar, so that every April 19th we can bake butter tarts, sell butter tarts, get together with our family, enjoy butter tarts, and just celebrate that legacy of Mary McLeod and all the pioneer women who braved the elements and the wild animals and made Canada what it is, right?
Okay, so as a butter tart aficionado, speaking to a very experienced butter tart judge, and I have deliberately left this until now, John, because I wanted to get the fulsome background of your effort here, but you know where I'm going, because these things, they can be divisive. And I guess I'm a little bit luckier. I don't recall ever really encountering a butter tart I didn't like, because sugar as a main ingredient, I'm a pretty happy guy. For me, it is all about what I call the goo. It's all about the filling. I don't really care about the pastry a whole lot. It's just they're holding the goo in place. I prefer mine a wee bit on the runny side, but here's the kicker. There had best not be anything impeding the delivery of the goo to my system. I don't want, and I know Mary McLeod had currants in her original recipe. I want none of that raisin nonsense in my butter tart, John Meissner. None of it. So what are we going to do about this? How do you feel about the raisin or the not raisin butter tart?
Well, before we get into the raisin or the not raisin butter tart, when we talk about a butter tart, and this is again as a Butter Tart Festival judge, when I'm presented with a tart, the first thing I do is look at it because we always eat with our eyes first. We do, right? So what I want to see when I'm judging a tart, I want to see that high resolution photograph of a butter tart. I don't like butter tarts that come in little tinfoil trays. That's not a butter tart. If you need that tray to hold your butter tart together, it's not a butter tart. I like butter tarts that look like those high resolution photographs. And I examined the crust. I examined the crust to filling ratio because you don't want a whole bunch of crust and a little bit of filling. And I've had butter tarts where, it's a nice looking butter tart and there's a nice crust, but when you break it open, there's nothing inside. It's empty. And I'm thinking, well, where's the filling? Where's the good part? Where's the goo that you're looking for, right? So that's one of the things I judge for is not only does it have a nice crust, nice presentation, but the filling is almost to the top. Right? It's not sunken in. There's not a crater in the tart. It's almost to the top of that crust. And then when you do break it open, there's that ooey gooey filling. Now, some people like it a little runny. Some people like it nice and firm. Nothing wrong with that. Either is fine. But I've had butter tarts where I break open that crust and it's like a dam breaking and there's this deluge, this monsoon of liquid that comes pouring out all over the plate and all over the floor. And again, what's the point of having a butter tart if there's no filling in it? You have to have the filling with the tart. Otherwise, you shouldn't be able to drink this thing with a straw, is what I guess I'm getting at. So when I'm judging, I make sure that the filling, there can be a little bit of runniness, but if it just spills right out, then that's a no-no for me. I like to think that I can walk down the street eating a butter tart and not getting it all over myself, right? That's kind of the litmus test, right? So then when it comes to the filling, what's inside? Well, we have traditional butter tarts, your plain, your raisins, your pecans, your walnuts, sometimes chocolate chips maybe would be considered traditional. And then you have your non-traditional butter tarts. And this is where chefs can get really creative, considering, though, that the foundation of the non-traditional tart is still the original butter tart, the original recipe. They're just adding a little something to it, like lemon or maybe a raspberry, or one of my favorites is a Haskap berry, which is a East Coast Nova Scotia berry. It's kind of like a marriage between a blueberry and an elderberry. So it's plump like a blueberry, but it's got a really tart sort of flavor to it, almost like a lemon. And that tartness really works well with a butter tart. So now to get back to your question, I'm a raisin fan. I like raisins, but as long as it's a traditional butter tart and we're following the way things are, there's no such thing as a bad butter tart as long as it's consistent with all those things I just described. My wife is a diehard pecan fan. She said that there's a reason they call them raisins because it's a sin to put it in a butter tart.
Smart lady, John. Smart lady.
That's why I married her. And for a plain butter tart, again, as long as everything else is like the way I described it, consistent, you've got that nice crust, the flakiness of it, the filling, that gooey filling. But the most important part when I'm judging a butter tart is the taste. Butter is the star of the show. And if I don't taste butter, it's to me, it's just a tart, right? So there are people who, use a lot of different shortcuts. Like I've had butter tarts that are made with margarine. No, I'm not tasting butter. I've had butter tarts that are made with sweetened condensed milk. No, not a butter tart. I've had butter tarts made with corn syrup, which to me is probably the most offensive thing you can put in a butter tart for a couple of reasons. One, corn syrup is not a natural sugar. It is, you can't take a kernel of corn and squeeze it and get syrup out of it, right? Like you can get syrup out of a maple tree. Corn syrup is made by taking the starches out of the corn. So you have to have a chemical process there to extract all the starches. And now you have to have another chemical process to convert those starches into a sweetener or into a sugar. And it just has this chemical flavor that's just unmistakable. And for me, I'm not a fan of it. Maple syrup is great. A maple bacon butter tart, really good. Yeah, so but butter, again, butter is the star of the show, and I've got to be able to take. It doesn't care. I don't care if it's plain pecan raisin. I've got to taste butter. Otherwise, I'm just eating a tart.
I think that makes abundant sense. If as long as on National Butter Tart Day, because I'm assuming this is going to happen, why wouldn't it? I can enjoy my plain butter tart, and you stay far enough away that you can have your raisin butter tarts, Meissner. Like fine. I'll never quite understand those failed grapes being in there. But anyway, as a as a fellow Ontarian and butter tart fan, and who has tasted so many, any places that you would recall, John, having tested a butter tart from that really stand out to you?
Well, I need to kind of remain impartial because I am a Butter Tart Festival judge.
That's fair.
But certainly I could tell you which places to avoid, and I could also tell you which ones I've really enjoyed. There is a place called the Butter Tart Shack, and his name is Jason, and he's a butter tart aficionado like you and I. And again, his butter tarts hit all the right marks. They hit all those criteria. I have had butter tarts from the Maid's Cottage up in Newmarket. Shout out to folks in Newmarket. The Maid's Cottage butter tarts, again, they conform to everything that I described. And the thing I know about Jason and Pam up at the Maid's Cottage is they don't use chemical fillers or anything like that. They are traditionalists. They follow the recipe. It looks like a butter tart, acts like a butter tart, tastes like a butter tart.
I am very impressed with the effort you've put into this so far. I am more than happy to support it because, again, why wouldn't we have such a day? And this is a lot of fun. Thanks a ton, John, for joining the show today. Really appreciate it.
You are quite welcome, Mike. Good talking to you. Anytime.
John Meissner. Let's make April the 19th National Butter Tart Day. Yes, please.